Before we get into the next podcast, it's kind of become a budding tradition that we sometimes take the opportunity, for your sake, to kind of do an introduction to the topic. Once again, the purpose of our podcasts is to inform a highly educated community of managers and leaders on how to perfect their management and leadership skills, specifically in projects, programs, portfolios, and PMOs. So sometimes if we feel it can help the understanding of the podcast conversation to go into a little bit more structured detail with slides, we'd like to do that. So we're going to take the opportunity. What we're going to be talking about in this podcast specifically is a capability model. What we're going to be talking about in this podcast specifically is a capability model. I'll tell you exactly which capability model that is. And we kind of want to do an introduction, a fair and neutral introduction of a couple capability models. Now, we've done personality models previously. We did an introduction on that as well. But we're going to go into specifically capability models, okay? How to assess and maximize the performance of your resources. That's kind of the driving thing. So what are capabilities, often also called competencies? I prefer the word capabilities, but some people refer to it as competencies. Skills and abilities that have theoretically the possibility of enabling you to master certain difficulties, solve problems, make good and fast decisions, and achieve goals and objectives. It's kind of, you need a certain capability or competency to do a pole vault. What those are specifically: speed, running, holding pole, arching your back, any number of different things would come into play. Skills and abilities that also have the possibility of influence others positively. So in the interaction or communication, those are also capabilities. To win an argument, that's a capability, right? To self-select and learn from the successes and mistakes of others. To master our lives, be happy, healthy, and successful. That's kind of that balanced workplace that we're talking about. Be successful at our job and to get promoted. That's also what we need capabilities for. And they help us overcome what we can't do or don't know. So that's one element of project management, is dealing with the unknown and developing certain broad capabilities that help us deal with the unknown is definitely a skill set we need to take a look at. Okay, so why are they so important, and why do we need to consider development? Without certain capabilities, we can't master our lives or our projects, right? We lose out on opportunities that pop up in our life. There's this wonderful quote that says, "Success is when opportunity meets preparation," right? Some people would say luck is when opportunity meets preparation. No, luck kind of leaves out the capability factor. It kind of leaves it up to chance. In capability building, our focus is what can we do from a proactive perspective to be prepared for the opportunities that come up. They're also important because we fail at achieving our goals and objectives if we don't have them. We end up being the weak link in the chain. There's this old saying, you're only as strong as the weakest link in your organization. That's not quite always true. There's some ways to perceive and identify weak links and to neutralize them. But that's also a capability we need to take a look at, right? You aren't a reliable and desirable human resource, which is the last thing you want to do. You don't want to be that kid on the playground that when they're picking teams, one team or the other, you never get picked, or you're the last person to be picked, right? So what are competency models? Competency models are professional, structured frameworks that make the attempt of assessing to define skills and behaviors and knowledge of individuals that need to perform their roles specifically. Okay, so basically, what do I mean with framework? Framework means it gives this topic vocabulary, it gives it a process, it gives it a structure on how to proceed, right? These models help organizations develop, assess, improve competencies in their workforce, in their team. So either on a broad perspective or on a specific perspective, right? Here's a short list of competency models that are a subsector of personality models. They all have a personality factor. Some of them have personality factors in them. Some of them don't. T-shaped model we'll talk about real briefly. Lohminger, SHRM, and the one that we actually want to introduce to you this is what the podcast will be about, will be the Kuan or Cone PM, and we'll take a look at that. So let's kind of go through it real quickly. T model, as old as the hills, Very straightforward and basic, a very basic understanding of competencies. What it basically says, the team model, is we start off with I development. In Japanese, we say shu-ha-ri. Shu means I'm an apprentice, right? So you start down here as a novice. I don't know anything, and my approach to learning is I will listen to my master and learn from them. I shut up and listen, right? Ha means I achieve a certain level of junior, intermediate, maybe even expert level, where now I have autonomy, I have authority, and I have a skill set. And Ri is true mastery, which means I understand the process so well that I can adapt the process and change the process and still be at a higher level of performance. Now, most of us, our education program is based on the I model, right? You have a broad perspective of things that you learn in school, but you commit in college, you commit to a degree. In your work, you commit to a certain department, and this is where your development is. Strangely enough, once we want to move up in the hierarchy of an organization, our specific skill set, engineering, IT, marketing, whatever it might be, is not sufficient, because to be able to move up in the ranks, you have to be able to manage people, and that's where the T development. So your technical skill has to be, if you're an engineer, you're going to have to learn something a little bit about stakeholder management or marketing, right? You might have to know a little bit about financials, about impact measurement, about communication, about leadership, about management. In fact, when I coach a lot of project managers, the first thing they say, listen, I'm a super engineer. Why do I need to know something about conflict resolution? Screw conflict. Why do I have to be able to learn something about emotional intelligence? That's not what I went to school for. But to be effective in their next role requires not only an extensive I development, but also T development. And this is a very rudimentary model that explains the following models that come up. Okay? So this is one that I've been exposed to. There's an interesting book out there called FYI. It doesn't stand for your information. It stands for your improvement. And it is actually a work that was developed on the research of Lominger, a gentleman, and Korn Ferry, one of the executive search companies out there, uses this model kind of to assess people. Okay? Developed by Michael Lombardo and Robert Eichinger. It's a leadership development model. It assesses three core categories: strategic skill, operating skills, leadership skills. And what's interesting is they've actually taken some time to do some research and said, okay, how many competencies, loosely spoken, do we have to play with? What are the ingredients that I have to cook with? And they come up with 67. You can disagree or agree, but it's an interesting framework to start off with, right? What's it good for? Leadership development programs, talent management, succession planning, to identify high potential leaders, and to help leaders at all levels develop their key competencies and also get feedback from other people, right? So this is what we're looking at. Now, we're not going to go through all of these in great detail, but these are the 67. And like I said, the very basic level, like managing diversity might be one. That's interesting. Delegation, how to be able to delegate. Dealing with paradoxes, that's one of my favorite. Conflict management. Composure, which means how do I stand in front of other people? How do I hold myself in a place of conflict? Career ambition, business acumen, negotiating. Patience is a competence. You might say, this is really on a very basic level. Yes, but these are the ingredients with which to cook to provide you an opportunity to become a better manager and a better leader. Now, they actually have a maturity model in Lominger that starts off with level 1, right? And you get points for being able to have these things, whether you're action-oriented, these are the competencies: customer focused, results-driven, financially aware, convey legitimacy, all that kind of stuff. So that's level 1. Then there's a level 2, based on the points that you get, another 8 points. Then you have a level 3. Then you have a level 4, level 5, kind of how maturity models work. We'll provide you a download option for this PDF. I'm not going to go through this in great detail. That's something that we'll do in the Academy. But this is just kind of to introduce you and soften you up to the topic of competencies models, right? A next competency model is called the SHRM. It comes from the field of human resources. It allows here in a different framework, a different approach to understanding it, 9 key competencies across 3 domains, and you basically have them broken down here, right? So you have behavioral competencies with leadership, business, interpersonal, right? So those are the 3 domains, and in the 3 domains, you have leadership, and navigation, ethical practice, you have business acumen, consultation, critical evaluation, relationship management, global. Now you might say, isn't this kind of redundant, overlapping? Yeah, they all talk about the same things, but whether they come up with 3 domains or 4 domains or 5 domains or 9 key competencies or 67, that's where it varies a little bit, okay? And like I said, I'm not doing advertisement for you using one model or the other, but being able to select the right competency model for you requires you to know what's out there, okay? Then we have the Spencers and Spencers. Behavioral competency comes from general management, defines competencies in 5 domains. Those 5 domains are skills, knowledge, motives, traits, and self-concepts. These competencies go into critical behavior, which create and generate performance, okay? Once again, a different framework with similar elements, okay? All of these models are basically used for the same thing. There's a second model that's used by Korn Ferry, which is an add-on a little bit higher up, which is called the Leadership Architect Competency Model. It's used for leadership and executive development, once again developed by Korn Ferry. Here, they focus on 60 competencies for leaders, 4 domains: cognitive skills, results-oriented, leadership skills, and interpersonal competency. Once again, if you're interested in that, that's something to do some research on. Then the OECD, which is a NGO based on close to the UN, that's responsible for developing government competencies internationally, public administration and governance, has 4 domains: investigate the world, recognize perspectives, communicate ideas, take action. This is a little bit broader. And here you kind of have a breakdown: knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. Here are the different skill sets that you have to, and how these go into extended competencies that develop then this mindset, this 4-stage mindset of being able to investigate the world, recognize perspectives, communicate ideas, and take action. This is I would say, probably one of the most in-depth ones we've taken a look at, because it takes a look at the whole value chain, not just the competencies, but what would be the outcome and the impact of using this. I kind of like this model, okay? For those of you who are interested in project management, if you're IPMA affiliated or certified, this might be interesting. IPMA, quite some time ago, came up with a competency model called ICP 4.0. It has 3 domains and 28 You might say, can anybody make up their mind how many Look, pick what works for you, okay? These are all frameworks that address the same thing. Pick which one works for you, right? So the 3 domains are people and practice. You could also say process, because that's what that's talking about, and perspective, the way we look at the world. And here you have the 28 competencies broken down here. In people, it's self-reflection, integrity, communication skills, relationship and engagement, leadership, teamwork, conflict, crisis. In the process area or practice area, you have design, objectives, and benefits, how you manage time, right? Perspectives is what is your strategy, your governance model, your compliance standards, your powers and interests. So this is the IPMA way of saying, listen, if you are IPMA affiliated and you want to know how good you are at project, program, and portfolio management, this would be a model that you can use. PMI, a little bit after IPMA, came up with their own version, okay? And they have 3 core, competencies, which are technical skills. Every project manager needs some kind of technical know-how. They definitely have to be a leader. That's a different skill set category. You have strategic and business models. Now, here it's called competencies. I would probably say that's the equivalent of domains, okay? They've reversed the vocabulary. The 8 domains are stakeholder, team, development, lifecycle, planning, project work, delivery, measurement, and volatility, uncertainty, conflict, and complexity and ambiguity. And then you have some principles. Quite honestly, if I was listening to myself, and I would probably be exhausted and overwhelmed, okay? Once again, what we're going to try to do here, what we want to start the podcast with, is to show you the prospects out there. There's a broad spectrum of frameworks that can help you assess the skill sets of your teams, develop a development program for them, and then to reassess them and let them know. What are we going to focus on this podcast? We're going to focus on a specific one that uses both the PMI talent triangle and the competency model from IPMA. So if you work with any one of these, you can also use this one in particular, okay, called Koan or Koan. If you use it comes from Zen Buddhism. We'll talk about what that means. This model here is a tool that will allow you specifically for projects, programs, and portfolio management to evaluate individuals, team competencies, to say, listen, if we are working in a project environment, do we have the skill sets to do the best job possible? Okay? It's an online tool that we can use to evaluate your team. By the way, it's an open source thing, so you don't always need consultants to help you with this. You can be trained by them, and then you can use the system yourself. Okay? It's used as a way to predict behavior. Okay, one of the great things about this model is it's based on a 360 model. So it's not just if you're the project manager, you get to evaluate yourself. Your sponsor or superior will also have the opportunity. And then you have the possibility of assessing, synthesizing what you've assessed to come together and agree upon something, maybe a common view, or agree what you don't agree upon. And then to take action. That ASA is a key part of it, right? Here's a cute acronym, what CONE stands for: knowing competencies, being able to help project managers find out what to rely on, to define ambitions, and to make sure that you nominate the best project manager. That's kind of a cute marketing term. I don't know if it really works. I think what actually helps here a little bit, and we'll talk about this in the podcast, is Koan is a Zen Buddhist principle that's kind of like a parable, a Greek parable. It's generally a short story that has a certain paradox element to it. And this is the brilliant part of these koans. They don't just rely on the wisdom of the teacher or the master in the story. The student has just as much to contribute to the learning factor. And it also kind of teaches you that life is not usually one truth. It's often a cosmic paradox where two seemingly contradictory terms can be in the same space, but still be true and relevant, okay? This is the model that we want to introduce to you in this podcast, so enjoy. We look forward to your feedback. Hi, this is your Project Management Cowboy coming back to you with our next podcast. We have the topic of capability measurement models today. We've had the privilege and joy of having two previous podcasts that deal a little bit with personality models and psychometrics. We've done the POPI model. We've done the process communication model. And I had the fortunate experience of a gentleman, Lieven Cornelis, reaching out to me on LinkedIn saying, hey, you know what? I see that you have a lot to do with project management. I see that you have a lot to do with PMI. Do you know that there's a capability measurement and development model for project management? And my ears did this, okay? Like I said, we serve the broad management and leadership community, but our loving focus, our passionate focus is anybody that has to do with projects, programs, portfolios, and PMOs. So, of course, we were interested. Without further ado, Lieven, what a pleasure to have you in our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for reaching out to me. We've already had a couple previous discussions, and you definitely piqued my interest. So maybe we should kind of set the stage or the ambition for this podcast. We love to introduce people who know things that we don't know, and we like to ask lots of hopefully intelligent questions. I don't mind calling them stupid questions because I think the best questions are the stupid questions, right? So that our potential listeners and our audience can assess what is it that Lieven knows that would be relevant to me, how can we use it, and what would be further steps.